All right, Robert, given a choice for the betterment of our future, what's better on a piece of land, a school or a shopping mall?
Well, it depends on whether it's on the main artery or whether it's surrounded by houses, or perhaps what was happening there 15 years ago is not what's happening there now, or 35 years ago, or 55 years ago. So it's a complicated question. The highest and best use we're seeing with modern buildings sometimes can be combined.
Well, there you go. And that's what we're going to be talking about on this episode of Real Estate Chat with John Der Perez. And
We're eating.
now imagine your school becomes a shopping mall. And Robert nailed a key point right there from the intro is that, what's happening in that neighborhood. Because I recently watched a YouTube video. I'll see if I can find it. I'll link it through it here. Somewhere in Pennsylvania, an old school was sold to a bunch of developers for $100,000. Nobody would buy it. Robert and I, if we raise $100,000, why not? But then the cost to develop that into it was residential rental apartments, revitalized that particular use. But we're going to talk about this article that Robert shared, which is Vancouver School Board tells judge it is considering selling a prime piece of land. And Robert will go through the drama of this, but essentially this land had a school on it, right, Robert? And then, apparently they found that they were like the owner of the land, whoever was a BD group, and was in default in $52 million in back rent for 2 years. So the board was in dispute with this group. Tell us a little bit more about this. And, we're going to tie it into an article as well about an Ontario issue with the school.
Exactly. This is about the highest and best use of land. It's about school boards, and it's about the very unusual practice of granting 99-year leases. His land is on a 99. I'm sure it's a 1,000-year lease. But it's a rare practice because if you have a time horizon that is 15 years, 25 years, 50 years, however long a building is going to last, then 99 years is a very long time. It's assurance for the developer that they will be able to build and recover all of their investment from that building by renting it out for a long period of time. And in this case, and you can't blame the school board for trying to maximize the amount of revenue they can get from their ground lease. But in this case, the school board let go of a school that they thought was not going to be a school in the early 70s. Falls Creek, before the Olympics, before the whole revitalization and huge immigration with the 97 influx of Vancouver, they thought it was kaput. It was an industrial area. They don't need that for a school. And so rather than selling it, they hung on to it and they leased it. It's on Main Street, gave a ground lease for 99 years to a developer who put up a mall there. And it's got a few stores in it, or Mark's Workers, whatever. And then someone took over, probably his bookkeeper on the school board, and said, I think they're not paying enough rent. So maybe if we got a review of the terms of the agreement said that the lease would be based on the market value of the land to protect, the future school board. But if we get the court to allow us to impute a higher value based on a future use, not even a current use, then we'll have a higher value, and then that will affect the revenue, and the revenue will go up, and so we'll get more money for it. So there's a big negotiation about what they're going to do, and now the threat is that they're going to sell the land, and so somehow they're going to void the 99-year lease somehow and sell the land to somebody else who's going to put something else there. Now, what if they need a school there? And they probably do, because now Falls Creek is no longer a bad neighborhood. It's no longer industrial. Now it's a hotbed of young couples that are coming in. What do they call it now? I don't know. I'm not from Vancouver, but this happens all the time. Now, school boards were wise to retain ownership by leasing it, but why do they lease it for 99 years for a building that's only going to last for 50? And they don't forecast for that period of time, I don't think.
Right. Yeah.
So it's changing the rules in the middle of the stream again, just like in our previous episode, changing the rules on someone who, in good faith, said, I'm following the rules. This is what you said, so I'll do it that way. And I said, no, you can't do it that way. He says, well, that's going against what you said you wanted to do 20 years ago. Happens all the time. So it's very interesting because it's a school board. And we in Ontario have school boards, and they have surplus schools all the time. And they also have old schools that were built in 1960 for their kids at the time, and they're on huge pieces of land, and they have old kind of bathrooms and terrazzo floors. You probably went to school in one of them. And some of them have no air conditioning, so for a couple of weeks in June every year, it's killer deadly, and they weren't built for computers, they weren't built for anything. So well, first Al Duffy, who was a former mayor of the town of Richmond Hill, just before I started living in Richmond Hill, suggested that on these school sites, what they should do is build a new school. And on top of that existing school, maybe of 2 floors, you build some seniors housing and maybe some geared to income housing and some condos on the top. It's only 10 stories, but all of those people can now use that schoolyard after school hours and during the summer when nobody's using it. And they can build a community center, what can be the school gym and can be the school pool, and the community can use it after hours. The kids get it during the time, and afterwards, away we go. So the developer will get a nice site for free. The school board will get a school that they didn't pay for, and the community perhaps will draw some more people because there's a nice new brand new school and community center. We'll draw some new families into that.
You know what, that's a very interesting solution. And if you missed the last episode, make sure you click make sure you subscribe and make sure you click like if you like what you hear so far, and watch our previous episodes of Real Estate Chat. But isn't that interesting that, you know, the highest and best use maybe isn't a shopping mall, but maybe it's a multi-use. I mean, provided you've got to look at, you know, safety measures and whatnot. But think about it, a school right across the school is housing anyway. Right across some schools is a shopping mall anyway. So if you combine that all in one lot, and you know, that may be the solution of land shortages. And imagine if downtown Toronto you had the mixed use of retail, a school, a community center, et cetera, catering to all sorts of demographics, then you truly maximize the amount of land. And some of these schools lots are, I mean, many school lots are humongous.
And the schools are outmoded. The model in Toronto was on Greenfield. The Catholic School Board had a school there, and they sold it right next door to the Yonge and Sheppard Center, 1 block north of Yonge and Sheppard. And so they gave Tridel the school site and said, okay, build us a new school and you can put 2 towers on the land. And that's exactly what they did. It's about 35 years ago. So it's not new.
Really interesting. So nothing new, except for new episodes of Real Estate Chat. If you subscribe, and make sure you write a comment about what you think. You know, do you think a mall is better? If you see a school in your neighborhood, would you rather have a mall there?
No, it's not a mall. It's the way they do condos. Retail on the first floor.
Retail, condos, et cetera, that sort of thing. And we've seen, like on Bayview here, we've seen a whole bunch of townhouses get reacquired. What's the formal term for that? The government term for when they take back something?
Expropriated.
So there's a term for that. Pop quiz of real estate. Expropriated a whole bunch of townhouses here on
Bayview and Cummer.
Yeah. Exactly. And they turned it into Catholic school. Right. So you're seeing that happen too. So if you're living in one of these areas, hey, you never know. One day the government might say, hey, we need a school here. Let's take your house back.
Well, that's a more complicated issue because that existing school had already been moved twice from downtown to a land up Bayview.
Yes.
And they sold that land up Bayview for somebody else, and this is going to be redeveloped. And the school board, Catholic School Board, decided that they were going to move it to an existing school, but they didn't like the way it fit on the lot. And so they expropriated some 20-year-old townhouses that were perfectly good, used the power of expropriation to impose themselves. They could have worked around it, but they just didn't.
Yeah, and there's a private school, is it Bayview and Finch here in this area, that there's a whole bunch of protests going on. I'm trying to find the name of the school here, but they're planning to build on its land. It's a massive land as well. They're planning to build condo towers on it. You know which one I'm talking about?
Well, this is the site that Morrow moved from.
Is that that's what you're talking about?
Tyndale College took it over to university, and now they're going to build, and the density, the neighborhood just doesn't like the density. Now, this is the way you develop something. You ask for the sun because you really want the moon. And so the town and everybody is happy that they only gave you half what you originally asked for, but that's all you ever expected.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for watching this episode of Real Estate Chat. We'll link these 2 articles in our show description. Make sure you click like and subscribe and share your comments with us. And we'll see you in the next episode. Take care and bye for now.
See you later, John.